Hey, Mr. Binks, you've never been to a zoo and you've never actually met a rhino up close and personal, which is probably just as well because you're very small. But we're jumping on Zoom now to talk about conservation dogs and about one dog in particular named AK, who's part of the Canine Wildlife Project out in Namibia on the front line, helping to save rhinos from poachers. I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. How delighted am I to be joined today by elite dog trainer Rory Hennebry and film director Paul Webster. Welcome, guys.
Thanks very much.
Because we're here today to talk about a landmark documentary that is called, appropriately for A Dog's Life, Canine. Now, Paul, as a film director, is this the first film that you've produced about canines?
It is actually, yeah, the first dog film. I've loved dogs. I've always loved dogs, but it's rare where a story like this comes along that you're fully centered around a dog. But as soon as I heard the story, I one of Rory's friends, he's a famous UFC trainer here, John Kavanagh. He posted about it, and there was at the time Rory was kind of planning to try and go to Africa and bring a dog out to help with anti-poaching. And straight away I could kind of see the film. It was sometimes, the best films are just really simple. I just thought, wow, if we could follow the whole life of one dog, one extraordinary dog, through its training from being a tiny puppy to following its progression and getting stronger, and then out to Africa. There's a film. So yeah, so that's where the kernel, or where the original idea came from.
No, I love it. So, Rory, you're an elite dog trainer, and I'm sure you've trained a lot of dogs and a lot of dogs, I'm sure, to do, some traditional police work, if you like, which includes tracking, a lot of amazing scent work, which I absolutely love, scent work and a dog's olfaction. But what first of all got you two together? How did you actually meet and decide, okay, we're going to follow this amazing dog, which Rory, quickly explain about the dog, the lead character, obviously, of this documentary.
Yeah, so AK is a Malinois. I'm sure you're familiar with the breed of Belgian Shepherd's dog, or one of the 4 breeds of Belgian Shepherd's dogs, named after the town from which they hail, which is Malines in Belgium. And the breed is normally selected for high-level police and military work. They're very intense on the whole, very a pastoral breed historically, but I don't think that they'd be used extensively in pastoral work or with the flock these days. They are favoured by the kind of higher tier of police and military application. I mean, they have exploded in popularity in the last 10 or 15 years, as I'm sure you're aware, over there in the UK as well as here in Ireland. Not always to their benefit, but they've featured in a couple of those, films recently. I think John Wick and there was a couple of other ones where they featured prominently and rose in popularity, and it's maybe not ideal for the promotion of the breed, but AK in particular, he's an intense dog. He's an extreme example of what is an extreme breed anyway, but a lot of character. He has a very strong character and a great work ethic, and I think of him like a force of nature. Like it's as if someone had given me lightning on a lead, and my job was to harness that power and to direct him in the way that would be most beneficial to him, assisting in the application in Africa, and manage him day to day in training and in his everyday life before he went over. But he even though I probably have a couple of decades of experience with the breed, he'd still push me to my limits.
Did he? I love Malinois. I mean, Paul, I don't know if you knew much about the breed, but on Instagram, Rory, you must have seen so many posts where you've got Malinois scaling fences, like probably better than a cat. You know, when I say fences, like I mean massive walls, like they'll climb. They have the ability to climb, which I find extraordinary.
Yeah, and we do a lot of movement exercises with them. So we do a lot of movement with the handler and dog, which you'd see a bit less of maybe on social media, where we put the dog through a lot of physical exercises with the handler, whether it's climbing through tunnels, climbing over walls, working as a team. I think is very beneficial to the dog and the new handler, that they can work under stress and work in close proximity, and that builds a different level of bond. It builds a different level of confidence in the handler with his dog, that they've worked to a higher limit of stress and they can operate under a higher level of stress when the need comes. But I think there's a big difference between a dog chasing a ball on a string over a 6 or 8 foot wall, or negotiating that obstacle with its handler. I think one is slightly more productive than the other.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget actually after the Paris bombings, I don't know, about 10 years ago now, there was a Malinois and the handler, and they sent the dog in. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, and he obviously died as he took all the bullets. There was an outrage afterwards when there was like this massive tribute on social media to the dog. I don't know if you remember that, Rory. And a lot of people found it disrespectful because so many humans had died in the bombings in Paris. But the overwhelming message, I had to talk about it on air, and I said the dog had become a symbol of what had happened, and his unwavering bravery, because he must have he must have picked up some of the smell of the cortisol from the handler, surely.
Sure.
There was that dog that became like the symbol of what had happened in Paris. But and that was a Malinois, because there's always that element of, in the real situation, of stress getting in the way. So you mentioned stress quite a lot there, and basically keeping your cool in a complete massive situation, which the dog AK and his new handler out in Namibia, they're going to have to do that together, aren't they, Rory?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like Rudyard Kipling said in his poem, if you can keep your head when all around are losing theirs and blaming you. I think that is the goal of the training, is to teach the handler how to manage the stress of the situation and how to manage the dog when you're under stress. Because we all love to say, I trust my dog, I trust my dog, I trust my dog. That's great. You trust your dog, but your dog is going to make mistakes. It's a living, breathing creature. It's fallible, no more or less than ourselves. And it's up to the handler to trust him or herself to be able to manage the dog under a stress and in a given scenario. And the only way to get ready for that is try and replicate it as close as possible in the training, in the build up to it. The training field will always be the training field, but if it's a groomed training field with no stress and no distraction, then you're not really giving yourself a real challenge or a real yardarm by which to measure your capability to operate in reality.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the big question with AK as a conservation dog, so his job primarily is to find the nasty people. What are the poachers wanting to do? Are they wanting to kill the whole rhino? I mean, that must be quite a big thing to move without being noticed. Or is it just the actual rhino horns that they slice off? I mean, it's dreadful.
Yeah, it's just the horn. So by pound or by weight, a horn on the black market is actually worth more than cocaine. So you can get up to $65,000 for, I think it's for a kilo of rhino horn. So, and they could have 8 or 9 kilos on them. So it's very, very lucrative. So all they want is the horn. They have even been known to kill rhinos just for stumps. It's such an extreme level that the reserves and the conservationists have gone to actually dehorn rhinos. So they will tranquilize the rhino and come in and actually every 18 months cut or saw off the horn in a kind of a, a managed way where they're trying to minimize the harm, but it is obviously risky. So that's the lengths that they have to go to, just to make them less of a target.
Mm,
And even at that, they have been killed just to get the stumps, because even a small quantity can be worth thousands and thousands of dollars.
it's extraordinary. And this black market, I mean, who buys the rhino horns then? Is it the, because you think of the traditional Chinese medicine market. Is it going there? Do they think that rhino horn will increase fertility or something?
There's that yeah, it's very deep-seated, kind of goes back millennia, this belief in rhino horn and this kind of mystic folk medicine. It's also a status thing, and yeah, it's mainly in the Asian markets, Vietnam and China, and like you could have them shave it into your drink, into a very expensive glass of whiskey. It's kind of to show their status. It's quite a, this has this idea of, consuming parts of these great animals, and you kind of take on this power. It's been, you know, done with lions, lions' teeth and things like that as well. And it just continues on. It doesn't seem to be abating, and we're at such a crisis point. And that's where the dogs come in, and I think that's the power of this story, in that, we've got so many environmental crises facing us, and it could be, we feel so removed from it, and especially here in the West, we don't have these animals here. So the dog is kind of like a Trojan horse. It brings us into that world in quite a unique way, and I think that's why people have found the short so impactful.
No, I absolutely. I mean, dogs, I do believe, will save humanity. I think we've messed up the planet so much, Paul and Rory, that I think, man's best friend. Dogs can diagnose cancer from our breath and sweat samples. Rory, you all know about this, the scent detection dogs, they can do so much. So they can detect cancer before medics can now, and they help diabetics manage their condition, and they help guide the blind and beyond. And every dog is everybody's emotional support dog. They are literally amazing. And I just love this whole application, if you like, for dogs now to really, help endangered species. Rory, explain a little bit more about the handover of the dog, because you obviously had AK from, I would imagine, 8 or 9 weeks, right? So you've obviously, and how old was he when you took him on that flight to Namibia? And you must have been panicking a bit. I don't want to humanize dogs, because I do believe dogs are not little people in a furry suit, but you must have had a few paternal issues going on there. You must have been thinking, gosh, I've invested so much in you, AK, and I know you're not going to let me down. I know that, but there must have been that feeling, right?
Definitely. And like, I have a very deep respect and love for the dogs that I train and work with. At the same time, it's not my first time raising a dog for service. So, I mean, that's something you have to accept and take on board if you're going to do this job, is that the dogs have a destiny beyond yours, beyond your input. It's a bit like, and I hate comparing dogs to children or to people, but it's a bit like your children as well. The day is going to come where you have to kind of let them go. You've done your job. You've put into them, hopefully, the morals and the work ethic and the drive. That's the children, not the dogs. With the dogs, you put in the skills. You draw out their drive. You draw out their capabilities. And from day one, I know that that's dogs' destiny, is to go on to serve and to work, and that is something I take on board from day one, and I kind of have in the back of my mind at all times that I want the dog to bond to the work more so than me. Obviously, there is a bond between me and the dog because we're together every day. We're out in the field working together. It's a deep bond. But I always tell the handler, and on that subject, the handler is selected up to 12 months in advance of traveling. So there's preparation. Like, first of all, I want to get to know the handler. I want to, I can't look him in the eye face to face, but, you know, or her, Zoom calls, phone conversations, because the success or failure of the projects rely very heavily on the appropriate matching of the correct dog with the right handler. And that means I have to trust that that handler is going to care for the dog, is going to value the dog as an asset, value the dog as a sentient being, as an individual that it's going to live with, and that's going to be able to utilize the dog and that it's going to make a difference in the theater that we want them to operate in and make a difference. So the selection of the handler is very important for me, because that puts me at ease that when I'm doing the handover, that it's going to be successful, and even more importantly, that the dog is going to be cared for on a day-to-day basis as a normal dog. When we travel, it is stressful. It is a bit of an adventure. It's fun, but it is work. It's work, and we'll do multiple sessions a day with the handler because we have a lot to cover in a relatively short period of time. That's another reason we make contact or make the selection of the handler as far in advance as we can, is because we want their mindset in the right place about the dog. We want to answer as many of the questions in advance that we can for the handler, that we have them prepped, we have them primed to be ready for the experience and for the learning once we arrive in the field with the dogs, with the dog, I mean, and that's vitally important, and it sets us up to succeed. It sets us up to have a successful first couple of days, and they're the most important days. The first couple of days that we everything is new for the dog. It's a new environment, a new handler, new water, new food. We try and minimize the number of new things, but obviously the air tastes different in Africa. The water is different. So we try and make the most familiar thing to the dog the tracking and the training, so that that becomes almost like something. The familiar is what gives us comfort. So there's a level of comfort in, oh, we're going tracking, cool, I know that stuff, I'm going to go tracking today. I always warn the new handler that I'm going to be the biggest distraction to the dog for the couple of weeks that I'm there, and that in that sense, at least the job is going to get easier once I've left, because I'm going to be a distraction to the dog. When I'm stood there and the new handler is handling the dog, the dog feels stress. It might be looking at me for guidance and direction and reassurance, as opposed to looking to its handler. So that I actually have to make it as easy as possible for the new handler prior to traveling, by appearing what, you know, to what might appear to an observer to be slightly cold with the dog. But certainly when I arrive in Africa, I'm not giving the dog a load of affection and attention, unconditional love. I'll praise it up if I'm handling and I get something right, but I want the new handler to do that. I want the new handler to be the one giving it its affection and giving it its unconditional love at the end of the day's work, or we're sitting around the campfire or whatever it may be. And the only reason I do that is to make it easier on the dog and easier on the new handler, rather than being kind of indulgent or being kind of feeling sorry for myself and, you know, being overly emotional with the dog. That's not going to make it easier on anyone except for me. So I try and make it as easy as possible to hand over. There's a lot goes into it. There's a lot of it's not just the tracking, it's not just the training. The handover is a kind of a big question.
I can so believe this, and you've just made my mind go whirring around, because of course, going from the wonderful part of Ireland that you're based in, you know, in Cork, which I've heard, I haven't been there, but I've heard it's like mega beautiful, and I've seen clips on your Instagram of where you've done training in some old castles, really, yes, and yeah, looks amazing. But of course, Oh, it's completely different to Africa, and obviously all the vegetation's going to be different. So all of the grass is going to smell different. The ground's going to smell. So the whole, yes, when you said the air's going to taste different, of course it is. But of course it begs that massive question. How do you desensitize a highly driven Belgian Malinois to possibly having to look a Black Rhino in the eye?
So, such a big question. So to start, what I try to do is from day one in training, this style of training might differ greatly to what your listeners might be used to, in the sense of, even if you're in the working dog world, in the world of sport or competitive obedience or competitive Schutzhund or whatever it might be, like, the goal is high drive, prey drive, having a dog very sharp on its obedience, very exact, a level of obsession for equipment, whether it's bite equipment or a ball on a string or whatever it might be. Like, that's um for me, that is not teaching a dog to deal with the stress of its environment, as opposed to taking its focus away from it. So what I do is I start by teaching the dog to deal with a level of stress appropriate to its age, appropriate to its training level, from its very foundation. So from a very young age, it's not fly around the agility course as fast as possible. It's steady, it's slow. We sneak in the obedience under stress. We sneak in. And when I say stress, it's not earth-shattering stress. It's not like the dog is shaking or drooling or anything like that. I just mean proportionate to its age, proportionate to its training level. I try to teach it that when it's under stress, look to me for direction, and we'll work our way through that stress.
Yes,
That's the
yes.
theoretical side of it. It might, it would take a demonstration to kind of show you in more detail, but the dog's foundation from a very young age, and it's a very short sessions at that age, it's very brief, but there is a level of stress applied, and the dog's taught to overcome it, work through it, look to me for direction when it's in that scenario, when it feels those feelings, and we'll work through it. We'll get through it. It'll all work out for the best. And what you end up with when you build that very slowly, very gradually, proportionate to the dog, you end up with a dog that in general is very good at dealing with stress. So, like, I don't socialize my dogs in the normal sense of the word. I don't bring my dog to doggy parks or doggy daycare or big groups of other dogs or people. I do stabilize my dogs. So I teach them how I expect them to behave when they're under stress, under distraction. I do bring my dogs to schools occasionally. My local primary schools and stuff have me down there to do a chat with the kids, and my dogs are very well behaved. On the distraction of a full school of kids screaming, and you can hear them outside in the yard and coming into the hall or whatever, isn't like it's not an easy thing for a lot of dogs to deal with. There's an energy of all those couple of hundred kids, and there's an excitement, and there's shouting, and they're coming into the room, they're all happy to see the dog. So I don't, while I do expose them to things, I don't have the necessity to expose them to every single thing in order to know how they're going to behave, because theoretically I'm their environment. Wherever I go, they should be stable. Wherever I go, they should look to me when they feel stress. So coincidentally, we're traveling to Dublin Zoo with two of the dogs that we're getting ready for Africa on Friday. And we're going to have the opportunity to spend a few hours there around some captive rhinos and captive giraffes and other animals, and I say assess and stabilize the dogs around those stresses. But I'm quite confident. Well, look, one of them is just a pup, but the 16-month-old, 18-month-old, like, I'm very confident in how she's going to behave, because I've gradually built up the levels of stress that she is capable of dealing with over the year and a half nearly that she's been training. And I also take the responsibility on myself as to how she's going to behave. So I'll manage her. I try to preempt how she is going to behave. I try to get into her mind as to what she's feeling, recognize her. She knows at this stage when I say, it's all right, buddy, I see it, it's okay, that she doesn't need to deal with that situation. If I say it's okay, it's okay. And that only comes through diligence and consistency in handling and management and appropriate. I don't put the dog in, I never put a dog into a situation that they're not ready for, that they're not prepared for, and have it go negative. I try to manage, I'm a bit of a control freak. I try to manage their experiences day to day, week to week, month to month, like micromanage their experiences, that as much as possible, everything is positive, everything is productive, everything builds their character, as opposed to allowing avoidance and allowing dogs lashing out or misbehaving when they're under stress. And you end up with, what appears to me at least, very happy dogs, very confident dogs, and dogs that when they're under stress, all dogs feel stress. It's not like my dogs don't feel stress in a new environment. They do, they feel it, but they've learned how to cope with that. And they will look to me for direction. They'll look to me for reassurance. So the first thing I'll do is notice the signs of it at the early stage, assess every situation. If I go up to the zoo on Friday, and I don't expect this to happen, but if my dog is doing somersaults and avoidance and pulling at the lead, I think that's highly unlikely. But say that were the case, well, then I've gone too far. I've put the dog in a situation that I shouldn't have, and I should take a few steps back, put the dog in the crate, and take a few steps back in training and reassess. I obviously had more confidence in her behavior than maybe I should have had, and I messed up. The dog didn't mess up. I made a mistake. I put the dog in a situation it wasn't ready to deal with. But I'll make sure to tag you in a few pictures come the weekend, where you can see whether or not you think the dog is dealing with things.
No, I applaud your approach. You know, I'm not a fan of dog walkers and not a fan of doggy daycares, to be honest. As I'm quite old, so I'm from a generation where those things didn't exist, you know, where you were supposed to walk your dog and you know, train your dog, and you build the bond. And if you can't spend most of every day with your dog, that's why I work from home, then there we go. I have to be a bit careful what I say, or I'll get hate mail probably at this point. But yes, you know, we're living in an age with dogs at the moment that it's horrendous. And I'm not the only person working with dogs to say this, to be honest. And we've lost perspective completely of what it is. Now I'm putting my own dog through a bit of a challenge, as the cat has just jumped right in front of her eye line. Prudence, don't let me down. Uncle Rory is on the other end of the microphone.
That might be particularly challenging to a bull terrier.
Yeah. No, she's all right. She's all right. But yes, they're not the easiest breed, as you know. You know, they're really not. You've got to be a bit mad, I think, to have a bull terrier. But then that's the thing. But I love them. You see, I'd love to work with a Malinois, but I would actually refer that to someone else. I'm better with your terriers and hounds rather than the highly tuned working dogs. But I'm really conscious that we must just switch over to Paul for a minute there, Rory. But I think, that's answered so many questions. And I'm interested also that you're training more dogs up to go over to Africa. So this is obviously an ongoing project for you, Paul.
Yeah. So I always kind of knew that there was a bigger story to tell, but as my filmmaker brain kind of took over, I knew we had to kind of start small, make the short film, see if it worked, and you can kind of use that then as a proof of concept. And, you know, for my own self to kind of learn about this world that Rory knows so well, and then learn how to kind of communicate that to other people. So we've kind of picked up all these skills and all this knowledge. I think all of us, and of course Rory is working with an amazing team there down in Cork. All these amazing people who've helped make the film what it is, and we want to kind of tell those stories in the feature film, and kind of really dig into this kind of duty that people have, that they've found working with these dogs, and this you know, sense of purpose. And that kind of mirrors with the people who are working to try and save the rhinos and elephants in Africa. So there's this kind of bond that they all share with animals, and that's something we really want to explore. And a big thing for me is to try and really get to the cutting edge of the poaching problem. And what we're looking at doing is uh 3 dogs to 3 different countries with all different kind of needs and kind of issues with poaching. So that's really exciting. So we're looking kind of across the continent of Africa, looking at Mozambique, South Africa, Namibia, and what we can achieve then by telling the story of these dogs and their trainers, each going to different places, we can really show, exactly what's happening, how urgent this is, what people are doing, and really show the urgency of it there, like in a way that no other film has done yet, as far as I know.
It's amazing. So you obviously went out there to Namibia. So you've done
Yeah,
filming in Ireland and actually on the ground there with AK and with Rory, and the new handler.
yeah,
Yeah, gosh,
yeah,
so it must have been absolutely brilliant. So you were there in the moment, as Rory was just explaining, the handover, because that was so brilliantly explained. And it must, though, you've touched on something briefly there, highlighting dogs perhaps in a community where dogs aren't, how do I say it? You're highlighting dogs, AK are raising the bar perhaps of knowing what dogs are to these locals. Can I say that?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right. Like the wildness of Africa is really something to behold, and from the even the small amount that we have witnessed so far, like just it's so bounteous and it's so incredible. And yeah, the thought that we have encroached on the wilderness so much is quite depressing.
Yeah.
Or it can be. But I suppose with this film, and with I think with Rory's charity, with the dogs, what they're trying to do, the common thing is it's actually we're trying to make something quite hopeful and empowering. And it's that thing of being so removed. And if we were as connected to wildlife as we are to dogs, then rhino wouldn't be going to extinct. We wouldn't be encroaching on the wilderness in such a destructive way. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do with the film, is actually show there's a group of people thousands of miles away from this problem in Cork, and they are giving up their Saturday mornings, giving up all this time to train these dogs to do something that can help, and I think that message is what's so powerful about it. And that, to because if we despair and if we lose hope, then it's already over.
True, actually, that's very, very, very wise words. But I mean, so Canine has been picked up by the Tribeca Film Awards. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a film that it's quite hard to get funding for, especially for short documentaries. So, it was kind of a leap of faith, and Rory gave us so much time, and could see the vision that we had and the value in it, and we really made this film together. It's a small group of us who put so much time and work into it, and Rory's got a great understanding of film and storytelling. So I love collaborating with him, and Keith Pendred is the director of photography, and he, gave up so much time. We all worked for free on this film, and it's been a huge challenge to make it, and then it had a great run in festivals in Ireland. And we kind of thought, okay, maybe that's it, and we'll kind of start using it as the kind of proof of concept to help get the film, uh the feature film made. And then Tribeca came along, which is probably one of the biggest film festivals, say after Sundance, and in North America. It's one of the top ones. It was founded by Robert De Niro, and it's actually his 80th birthday this year, so they're doing a big celebration with him. So I know Rory's a huge fan of Robert De Niro as
Yeah.
well. So it's a total honor, and yeah, we're just so excited to be heading over there in a few weeks. And the festival have just been amazing. They just really loved the the film, and they never had a film that was made in Namibia before. So uh they're just extremely excited about it, and we just can't wait to see what opportunities come up from there.
Oh, it's amazing. So when is the awards exactly? And when might we be able to watch this ourselves? Is it coming to that streaming service beginning with N?
Well, we are in talks with a streaming service so for Europe. So hopefully um and that will should include the UK as well. So there's a few different avenues that we're exploring. So we will let you know hopefully in the coming months that it will be available. At the moment, we're sticking to the festival run, and generally when you're doing the festival run, they like it to be exclusive to festivals, you know. Uh so we don't know yet, but hopefully by the end of this year, people will be able to watch it, and then we'll be coming back then with the feature a bit further down the line. We're hoping to film towards the end of this year into next year. So yeah, it's very exciting times, and yeah, I can't wait to actually be able to share the film with people and they'll be able to watch it at home.
Oh no, I can't wait. I can't wait. And a feature film, that sounds amazing, because this is the first time even the thought of conservation dogs working like this has crossed a lot of people's minds. I mean, would you agree there quickly, Rory?
Like you were pointing out the multiple ways in which dogs are utilized, and in Europe we've a long history of using them in police and military service. In modern history and even in ancient times they were used in warfare. So I I think, like, in Africa there is less of a culture historically of using them in that role. I mean, they've hunting dogs, and the colonizers brought over dogs from Europe with them. But I think it is it's a relatively new area which they're being used in now in Africa. But it is making a big difference, and it is like an area that the skills need to be passed on, and there needs to be breeding programs set up, and it needs to be developed. It needs, because one dog, one handler can only do so much. It needs to be it's something we'd love to build on. We'd love to build bigger. I mean, as a company, we got charitable status at the end of 2002, December 22, I think it was. The charity is called the Canine Wildlife Project. If anyone wants to follow us on Instagram or Facebook, we've got a web page or a web site you can check out, and follow the progress of the dogs that are in training. And it is something that we'd like to do on a larger scale. I mean, no one in the charity gets paid. There's a board of directors there that do a load of work. There's a multiple trainers that help me out and assist me. Obviously, I can't teach a tracking dog to track on my own. It's something that we need different people for on a regular basis, and there's a huge level of commitment from other people to help as much as they can. But it's something that we'd love to develop and do multiple dogs each year, and keep going for a long period of time, which is something that will rely like largely on getting a corporate sponsor. Right now we're getting helped out a lot with the logistics of things, the travel and the transport, by kind of the GoFundMe page, and we call it, like, small kind of events that we might put on. But we are looking at getting aligning our goals with a bigger sponsor who sees the potential in what we're doing, and maybe developing it into something much bigger than it is. And that might be, getting multiple dogs out a year, training up handlers and trainers in Africa to start a small breeding program there. That would take a bit of infrastructure and a bit of training, but that's kind of the bigger goal, the long-term goal. If we can even keep it going for the next few years and keep getting a dog a year or two dogs a year, that would be in itself a huge achievement for us, because we're all doing it on top of having family lives and having our own businesses, our companies, our jobs that we're doing. Yeah, it would be nice if the momentum we're getting a lot of There's a lot of momentum going in the right direction at the moment, and from day one, I mean, that's to be honest, that's how it started off. It started off as a single conservation getting in contact with me, just looking for pricing on the supply of a dog, and I offered the dog for free, for no cost, if they were able to cover the logistics of the transport of the dog and the training of the handler. And it's just the amount of goodwill and interest in general that sparked, and obviously Paul getting in touch and making the short film was a huge motivator, and it's great for the publicity that it's brought with it to what we're doing. But it just feels like it's too good of a thing to let slip.
Yes. Oh, without doubt. I mean, gosh, I think you should send David Attenborough a copy of the film, I mean, he would love it. I mean, maybe they could do a whole feature, he would love it, I'm sure,
Great idea.
I absolutely love this, and I really do wish you all the success at the awards. And it would be lovely to keep in touch, and we can do an update on all of this, which I'd really, really like to do. So thank you guys for joining us today. And I know everyone's loved listening. So I hope you'll come back.
Definitely. It would be great to be back on. And thank you very much for having us on, because, it's a great opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much.
That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, AK must indeed be a very brave dog. And what's that? Yes, you're right. It is time for Woof of the Week. The conservation dogs working in Africa go to simply underline how dogs really are not only saving us from ourselves, but saving the rhinos from mankind and indeed the planet. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again, of course, to Rory Hennebry, elite dog trainer, and Paul Webster, film director, for joining us today. And all their links, of course, are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, as well to Mike, my producer, for all of the music and production as ever. So check out @PodPeopleUK to find out more about Mike. And for me, I'm just at Anna Webb Dogs, or you could check me out at my website, annawebb.co.uk. What's that, Mr. Binks? You're right. We will be back in your feed next Sunday. So why don't you subscribe? It's free, and that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.